What's up, y'all? We sadly need to talk, and there's a couple things that we're going to get into today, but first of all, let's start off with the fact that we kidnapped the president of Venezuela. That's right. The United States kidnapped the president of Venezuela and his wife, and they're bringing him back here, and we're cooing that country. And they're saying they're doing it over drug war reasons and narco-terrorism. But honestly, I'm so sick of that word terrorism because it's twisted to be used for anything that they want to have a response to that doesn't seem like it's measured. Like, if 10 people get killed, it's like, oh, that was a mass shooting. But if one person gets killed, that was somebody that they wanted to protect, they're like, that's terrorism. And so we have a lot of like weird misuse of that. And one of the situations that's being deployed is in this narco-terrorist description for these Venezuelan fishing boats, for instance. And all right, here's one thing. If you had no idea that this was going to happen, if this is a complete shocker to you and you feel like you think you're informed on the news and what's going on, then you need to find a news source for your news, because this was writing on the wall for months, if not longer. And at the start of these fishing boats being blown up, the fact that there was no response and the fact that there wasn't even really a good response inside of our country saying, no, we need to stop that. Obviously, things were going to get taken to the next step. But is this really a narco-terrorism war? Well, very little drugs actually come here from Venezuela, so that doesn't actually make sense. It's not a sizable enough percentage. It's not fentanyl. It's not the things that are really problematic here. That's not where they're coming in from. That being said, what do they have in Venezuela? What else do wars typically get fought over? Resources. I think it's resources. Yeah, so what kind of resources do they have over there? Let's think. Oil, crude oil. I think Venezuela has the biggest reserves of crude oil on Earth. Potentially some of the largest reserves, if not the largest untapped reserves on Earth. And we have the capacity to process that crude oil here in the United States. So, seems a little interesting that they say it's for one thing, and yet you see it all over the news. There's people saying, oh, we're going to be able to get such good deals on gas now, and there's right-wing influencers being like, this is going to be so good for our economy because the oil, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yo, I thought that we weren't supposed to be doing this. Like, it makes me think of Talib Kweli and Mos Def, their song Ballad of the Black Gold. It says, the Ballad of the Black Gold, they call it Texas tea. It's all about oil and Iraq and the oil war in the Middle East and how jacked up all this is. And it's like, we're just right back there again, doing it again. So let's talk about this chronically offline thing that people have been talking about. I had a little short where I was like, if you were really chronically offline, you'd be telling me that in person, obviously not on the internet. I think it's a little bit ironic. And I was actually chronically offline for all before COVID, basically from high school until COVID hit for me, which is like 2012, 2013 until COVID. I was offline, like completely. I was totally unplugged. I was like, I don't even know all that crap. Everyone's just yapping. It's not worth listening to, yada, yada. I can get my news from talking to people and from tuning in every now and then. I just want to learn about what I want to learn about. And that was cool for learning about certain things. I was watching videos on regenerative gardening. I was keying into things that I was interested in, like music, and educating myself in my own way. But I have to say, I was missing out on a lot of the conversations. And so when COVID came around, I was completely confused. I did not know which news sources to trust, in which ways, and where I could go to get reliable information. And so I am really an advocate for having a news diet that informs you about the things that you're going to be interacting with in your life. And if I didn't know about a lot of these different things going on, a lot of the conversations people are having, I would be iller equipped to have conversations with the people that I've run into on a day-to-day and actually inform them or change their minds about something that they're totally propagandized about. So I do find now that there is value in having a conscious news diet and being aware of the things that are going on, enough so that you can't be misinformed because you already have some of the correct information. So you're like, nah, that smells fishy, right? So honestly, if you weren't aware of this going on, then your news sources are not giving you the news. And you need to find some people that were talking about this before. For instance, right after October 7th, there were some people that are like, this is going to be really, really bad. And there were other people that was like, oh, Israel's just going to bomb them back. It's just how it goes. Well, all the people that were like, this is going to be really bad, we need to pay attention to this, those are the people you should be getting your news from. And in that same way, the same people that were calling attention to the stuff that's going on with Venezuela, those are kind of the people you should be getting your news from, because the people that aren't talking about the wars, it just really feels like you're bought off at this point. And we know where a lot of the funding goes from these new news organizations. And it's also really frustrating because a lot of the funding for these social media companies, I mean, they don't want us to be using certain words, and then you have people nerfing their language and saying unalived and saying all this goofy stuff because they want the AdSense, and you gotta understand it. And so we like end up totally changing the way that we're talking about things to make it fit in with the mold of how we're allowed to share it. And so many of the mainstream news organizations don't want to talk about war, and they don't want to talk negatively about things that America is doing. And so honestly, this is just a time that you got to be paying attention. There's going to be a lot of weird stuff going on with the way they're going to be trying to sell this to us. And honestly, I'm just always against it. I'm always against it. You're going to have to prove to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that somebody is actually threatening us for me to be like, yeah, we have to like attack them. But at this point, this just always ends badly for Americans. Whether you think this is going to get us cheap oil, whether you think this is going to be a short-term gain, there's always a long-term pain, and it feels like there's no such thing as regime change. At the end of the day, all you can do is destabilize. And when you destabilize, you can temporarily do a regime change, but it costs money to keep your fingers in all sorts of cookie jars all over the earth. And so eventually, when you don't feel like paying enough to sustain that situation anymore, you're going to let it collapse. And then we end up with a situation where there's a bunch of people clawing for power, or like the Afghanistan withdrawal. You can't fake hold power forever. Eventually, people will rise up, and then you're going to have the same kind of power vacuum situation that you had like right at the beginning of the coup, with people trying to like reestablish the boundaries of what rules that civilization is going to follow and who has the power, etc. So it is really frustrating. And then the other thing that really upsets me about America getting into all sorts of foreign conflicts is that this ends up destabilizing people to the extent that they have to become migrants a lot of the times. So a lot of these refugees are refugees of war. And so if we're causing, or we have part in, or we're selling weapons to, or we're allies with a party to all sorts of terrible actions, then we're going to be like, how dare these refugee immigrants come to our country? It feels a little bit like it just is like a logical misstep. It doesn't make sense that you would be like, we're going to bomb your country. And then when you're like, I have nowhere to live, we're going to be like, why don't you go back to your country? It's like tone deaf. Doesn't make sense. So I'd really like to see us cleaning up our act, and we're not doing it. And honestly, I remember things, they were saying Kamala's going to get us into World War III. They were saying Donald the Dove. They were saying Donald is no new wars president. He's the only president that hasn't gotten us into new wars. First of all, the drone wars never stopped. Never. So I don't even miss me with that one. Second of all, this is awful. The stuff, it feels like we're creating enemies all over the world right now. I've never felt more unsafe, though, as an American, from just like my own neighbors, honestly. I don't even want to say my neighbors. Maybe that's the wrong way of phrasing it. But it feels like I'm susceptible to being robbed, or people are driving like crazy, or, you know, we live in a time of unrest right now, and people are really frustrated. And I think a lot of that stems from the fact that people don't have enough resources, and so many people are struggling to get by. And so we're looking for something to blame. We're looking for something that we can easily explain this away. And so that turns us more into assholes towards each other. And I just don't prefer that. And so I really am frustrated that while the Trump administration was claiming over and over again that it's America first, we're going to take care of Americans, anyone that bought that, I got a bridge to tell you. But that being said, it's far gone now. So if you are still on the Trump train, then you are not America first. That's where you're at right now. If you're still supporting this, do you realize how much money, how much resources? Sure, some of the weapons companies are going to make a bunch of money, and the people invested in them. But what about the rest of us? How does this help us? This is terrible for us. Everything is terrible. Instead of putting more investment here, we're going to just send it overseas to blow up more people. And honestly, America is turning into like a deadbeat dad that's like, hey, son, you're a really good boy, the apple of my eye. But I've got to go out for milk now. Door slam. Then like 30 years later, oh, who's at the door? Hey, son, I'm home. Oh, Daddy's home. Oh, where have you been? Oh, yeah, I was just out getting milk, and then I accidentally killed 200,000 brown people. That's where we're at. Somehow, it always ends up with tons of people dying, and it always ends up with tons of people being traumatized. Even the person that's inflicting the violence ends up inflicting violence upon themselves through blowback. And so it's like all these things that are our problems right now. Even the opioid epidemic was impacted by the fact that we were in Afghanistan, and there was people that were working over there that were smuggling heroin back into the United States, adding to that problem. Then we had the fentanyl crisis following the opioid epidemic, so people were already ready for some hardcore downers. And then we had the pharmaceutical company come in with their painkillers, and then we had fentanyl from the pharmaceutical companies, and now we have the fentanyl crisis. And so it is, and we're fighting it by fighting with a country that doesn't even bring fentanyl here. So that's where we're at, America. So get your shit together. We need to get our shit together. If somebody starts talking crap about, oh yeah, Venezuela had it coming, it's like, tell me one thing about Venezuela that you know, honestly. And not the propaganda about Trende Aragua. Like, come on, man. Come on. Tell me one thing that you really know that Venezuela was affecting us in a negative way. I'm not vouching for Nicolas Maduro. I heard that he's not really a great guy. But it doesn't really seem to work out when people fiddle in other countries' processes. So here we are again. Oops, I did it again. Like the Britney Spears of foreign wars and foreign affairs. So yeah, it's a struggle, guys. But everybody hang in there. And yeah, since I was chronically offline for so long, one of the things of getting back online is I want to be engaged and also putting out stuff as well. So while I want to be sharing informative stuff, I also just want to come on here and share my opinions about stuff like this, because there's so many people that are like putting out some terrible takes, and I'm just a normal guy. I work a full-time job. I'm just out here telling you what I'm seeing. I listen to the words right out of Sleepy Trump's slurring mouth myself, and I'm not for this, and I hope that you're not for this either. All right, America. Peace.